The anomaly was born during a thunderstorm in a Nebraska cornfield, though no one would admit it for centuries. Scientists called it Project Beacon, a 21st-century microwave array designed to harvest solar energy from orbit and beam it down to a receiver station near Alliance, Nebraska. A clean energy revolution. A triumph, until the first pulse ripped through the ionosphere, not with a bang, but a twist. Subspace fractured, a hairline crack, invisible to satellites, unnoticed by engineers celebrating their flickering dashboards. Only the corn felt it. For 3 harvests, stalks grew inverted, roots clawing skyward, leaves curling into fractal spirals. Farmers blamed pesticides. The government bought the land, bulldozed the fields, and buried the receiver under 12 tons of concrete. Project Beacon's data was scrubbed, its staff scattered, its failure rebranded a localized atmospheric anomaly, but the crack lingered. Over decades it widened, a silent, hungry thing. Pilots near the Nebraska border reported instruments glitching, stars smearing like wet paint. Conspiracy forums buzzed about the quiet zone, where radios died and drones vanished. The United Earth Senate dismissed it as radiation fog, even as their fastest ships began failing near the sector. By the time humanity reached the stars, the crack had metastasized, a wound in reality, a secret. They labeled the region Nebraska on galactic charts, a bureaucratic inside joke masking unease. Here be dragons. The ancient cartographers would have called it. Modern admirals preferred subspace instability, a phrase as sterile as the labs that birthed it. No one asked why human expansion stopped there. No one dared. Deep in the void, something listened, something that mapped the stars not by light, but by the scars between them, and the scar over Nebraska was the loudest of all. Chapter 1. The stars beyond the cockpit viewport weren't the problem. Hank Cooper could navigate stars, it was the nothing between them that gnawed at him. The black wasn't empty. Any trucker-turned-star pilot knew that. But out here at the frayed edge of human space, the dark hummed with a static that made his molars ache. He tapped the ship's console, a habit left over from driving rigs through Nebraska blizzards, back when roads still mattered. The Mary May's engines answered with a grind, coughing rust from exhaust vents. She was a salvage hauler, all welded steel and exposed wiring, smelling of ozone and the egg and potato burritos he kept thawing in the micro-fryer. A working girl, just like him. His gloved finger hovered over the comms array. 3 hours to the border checkpoint. 3 hours of dead air, unless he fired up another podcast episode. The files glowed on the screen. Cosmic CB Radio, episode 214, Why Nebraska. His wife's voice played in his skull, gentle, chiding. You're chasing ghosts, Hank. Let the dead rest. But Ellie hadn't seen the security feeds from her own lab before the accident, the way the stars rippled that night. She hadn't sat through Senate subcommittee hearings where admirals sweated through dress uniforms, insisting Nebraska sector was just a harmless joke. No one joked about the dead, not out here. He opened the episode, let the recording light blink red. "Y'ever notice," he drawled, leaning into the mic like it was a truck stop bartender, how every alien empire's got their boogeyman corner. Qatari got the Maw of Kiosh. Yggdrathak's got the Screaming Gulf. Us? He thumbed the star charts, projecting a flickering hologram over the co-pilot's seat. A vast swath of human space ended abruptly at a jagged line labeled Nebraska in blocky Terran script. Beyond it, blankness. We got corn apparently. Real convenient, ain't it? That we stopped expanding right where the galaxy's supposed to get real interesting. The Mary May shuddered. Hank's boot jammed reflexively against the floor rail. An old trucker's move to steady himself. The hologram dissolved into pixelated mist. Hell, he killed the recording. Sensors showed nothing. No debris, no ion trails, just the quiet. Always the damn quiet. Ellie used to laugh about his hatred of silence. You Nebraska boys can't stand being alone with your thoughts. He flicked on the playlist. Skynerd's guitar riff rattled the cockpit speakers. Sweet Home Alabama, Ellie's road trip song. The one she'd hum while diagnosing some alien fungus in the lab. The one that had been playing when collision alert. The Mary May lurched sideways. Hank's harness dug into his collarbone as the gravity compensators whined. He'd taken his eyes off the navs for 30 seconds. Stars spiraled outside. Not stars, jagged metal fragments, glittering like shrapnel. A derelict? No transponder signals, no heat signatures, just debris, ancient and pocked with crystalline growths that pulsed faintly violet. Alien. Definitely alien. His hand danced across the thrusters, easing the ship back. Human space didn't have crystalline alloys. Human space didn't have anything past Nebraska. The border checkpoint should have been a half-click starboard, but the nav showed only void. His stomach dropped. Drift. He drifted. The Mary May's alignment was off. A hairline fracture in the starboard stabilizer, probably. He'd meant to fix it last week. Meant to do a lot of things. The debris field shimmered. Not random, he realized. It formed shapes, angles, a hexagon here, a spiraling lattice there. Ruins. These were ruins. Oh, you gotta be kidding me. He'd crossed the border. Skennard still blared. He lunged to kill the music, but the console sparked, refusing input. The Mary May's ancient wiring, fried by whatever energy hummed in this place. A shadow eclipsed the viewport. At first Hank thought it was a meteor, then it turned. Smooth as oil, a ship the color of tarnished silver slid into view. No engines he could see, no viewports. Its surface shifted when you didn't stare directly, as if covered in crawling glyphs. The debris field reacted, crystals flaring crimson. The alien vessel rotated, revealing a belly studded with hollows like screaming mouths. Hank's hand hovered over the comms. Hail them? Surrender? Ellie's voice again, cool and clinical. First contact protocols. Hank. Slow movements. They'll be as scared as you. But Ellie hadn't met whatever built that thing. Its edges hurt to look at, like a migraine given form. The ship fired, not lasers, not missiles. The Mary May's console lit up with warnings as the fabric of space itself warped. Gravimetric shear. Hank's vision doubled as the ship groaned, armor plating buckling. He punched the emergency thrusters. No finesse now, just raw, roaring acceleration. The alien vessel dissolved, reappearing off his port side, faster than light hops. Small ones, military tech humans didn't have. His podcast recording still ran, he realized. The red light blinked. Let them hear. Let someone hear. This is Hank Cooper of the Mary May, he rasped, voice steadier than he felt. If you're getting this, tell the Senate their boogeyman's real, and it's pissed. The alien ship surged. Hank closed his eyes, not for prayer, for memory. Ellie's laugh, the way she'd twirled a bioluminescent fern from Alpha Centauri, as the lab lights died. Look, Hank, it's singing, metal screamed. Then nothing. Chapter 2. The air tasted like burnt copper and static, a metallic tang that clung to Hank's tongue as consciousness seeped back in. His skull throbbed, a dull ache radiating from the base of his neck where the harness had bitten into him. He kept his eyes shut, clinging to the dark, a moment longer, as if the weight of his eyelids could press the memories away. Ellie's laugh, the fern's bioluminescent glow, the lab's sterile lights flickering. Stop. He breathed in, out, the rhythm steadying him. Then he opened his eyes. The cell wasn't a cell, not in the way humans built them. No bars, no plastisteel walls. Instead, the room curved like the inside of a nautilus shell, its surfaces etched with luminous glyphs that shifted when he blinked. Star charts, constellations he didn't recognize spiraled across the ceiling, some pulsing faintly, others snuffed out like dead embers. A low hum vibrated through the floor, the sound of machinery buried deep in the bones of the ship, or the planet. He couldn't tell. The IG hadn't bothered with restraints. Why would they? The walls themselves seemed alive, watching. Hank pushed himself upright, his boots scraping against the floor, smooth, glassy, and cold as permafrost. His jacket was gone, stripped down to his grease-stained undershirt. They'd taken his tool belt, his comms, even the frayed photo of Ellie, he kept tucked in his breast pocket. But they'd missed the podcast recorder fused into his wristwatch, a relic from his trucking days, jury-rigged to survive EMPs and engine fires. The red light still blinked, recording, always recording. He traced a finger over the glyphs. They recoiled from his touch, swirling into new patterns, a map redrawing itself. Paranoid cartographers, he thought. The Ig's fear was etched into every line, every stuttering pulse of light. This wasn't decoration, it was a warning. The door arised open without a sound, no guard, just a corridor beyond, lit by the same restless star maps. Hank hesitated, then stepped out. The air here was drier, scented with something sharp and herbal, alien. The walls narrowed as he walked, glyphs contracting like muscle fibers. A trap, or a test? He followed the path, boots echoing too loud in the silence, until the corridor spilled into a vast chamber. It was an archive, or a temple. Rows of crystalline pillars stretched toward a domed ceiling, each pillar humming with holographic data, three-dimensional star charts, equations that squirmed like worms, and what looked like scream trails, distortions in space, rendered in jagged red vectors. The void. The Ig had mapped its growth, century by century, the red tendrils creeping closer to their borders. At the chamber's center stood a dais, where a Yig in robes the color of dried blood adjusted a hologram with spindly four-jointed fingers. Carto priest. Hank's podcast rants had mentioned them. Heretics, who questioned the maps, were scrubbed from the charts themselves, erased. The priest turned. Its face was a mosaic of chitinous plates, eyes like shards of obsidian. It hissed, a sound like steam escaping a valve, and the walls shuddered. Glyphs flared crimson. Hank froze, but the priest didn't advance. Instead it gestured to the hologram, a rendering of the Mary May adrift in the debris field. Skynerd's guitar riff still crackling through dead speakers. The priest's claws tapped a rapid staccato against the dais, accusatory. Afraid. Didn't mean to trespass, Hank said. Slow, hands raised. Just a malfunction. Let me patch my ship, and I'll be. The priest screeched. The hologram shifted, zooming in on the debris field, on the crystalline ruins. The image flickered, and for a heartbeat, Hank saw it, a ripple in space, a tear in the star chart's fabric, the void. But this close, it looked almost mechanical, a jagged scar, edges glowing with the same feverish red as the Ig's warnings. The priest slammed a claw into the dais, and the chamber plunged into darkness. They threw him into a new cell, smaller this time, the walls etched with a single repeating glyph, a spiral devouring itself. The Ig hadn't touched him, hadn't spoken, just sealed him in with the weight of their silence. Hank sat with his back to the wall, the cold leaching into his bones. He thumbed the recorder on his wrist, the red light a tiny heartbeat. Day 2. If they're feeding prisoners, I missed the memo. Also Yig interior decorators. 0 stars. Literally. A clank echoed down the corridor. Hank tensed, but it wasn't the priest. A smaller Yig shuffled into view, its carapace dull gray, instead of polished black. It carried a tray of something, gelatinous cubes shimmering with iridescent swirls. The Yig set the tray down, claws trembling. Up close, its eyes were clouded, one antenna snapped short. A laborer. A nobody. Hank nodded toward the glyphs. What's that mean? Soup of the day. The Ig flinched but didn't leave. Its claws danced in the air, sketching a shape, a star, then a spiral, the void. Then it pointed at Hank. Me? I didn't make that mess. The Ig hesitated, then tapped its thorax twice. A name? A title? Veer, Hank guessed. The Ig dipped its head. Yes, and scurried away. Veer returned each day. The Ig's circadian rhythm was a mystery, with trays of food and furtive gestures, a game of charades across species. Hank learned to read the twitch of antenna, the angle of claws. Veer's maps were different, not fear, but curiosity. Once they left a shard of crystal on his tray, human-made, from the Mary May's debris. Hank held it up to the light, and the fractures echoed the void's scar. You're asking how? He realized. How did we break the sky? He began sketching on the walls with a sliver of carbonized metal, equations from Ellie's notes, half remembered, the microwave array experiment, 21st century fools, trying to beam solar energy to Nebraska, ripping subspace like cheap fabric. Veer watched, antenna quivering. One night, they brought a datapad, YIG tech, all organic circuits and bioluminescent nodes. Hank input the equations. The pad hissed, then projected a simulation, the array's pulse, the tear, the centuries of decay. Veer's claws clattered. Horror. Recognition. The priest came for him at the apex of the YIG's night cycle. No warning. The door hissed open, and 4 guards dragged Hank to the archive temple. The hologram now showed the void's red tendrils brushing YIG colonies. The priest pointed at Hank, then at the hologram. A demand. Fix it. I'm a navigator, not a goddamned physicist. Hank spat. The priest didn't care. It wanted a ritual, a scapegoat. Veer hovered in the shadows, their carapace duller, antenna drooping. Hank met their gaze. Help me, he pleaded silently. Veer's claws twitched. Wait. The guards marched Hank to an airlock. Execution via the void. Poetic. His mind raced. Ellie's notes. The crystal shard. Veer's datapad. The priest chanted. Glyphs flaring. The airlock door groaned open. The void's static howling. Hank's wrist recorder blinked. Make it count. Last words? Tell the Senate. They owe me a beer. A blur of gray. Veer lunged, claws slashing the priest's throat. Iridescent ichor sprayed. The guards froze, torn between protocol and panic. Veer tossed Hank the datapad, and a tool belt. His tool belt, salvaged from the Mary May. Run, they rasped, their voice a grating hum. Hank ran. The shipyard was a cemetery of derelicts, YIG vessels with hulls like scarab shells. Veer's sabotage had killed the lights, but the void's glow lit the way, a sickly red pulsar. Hank's boots crunched over exoskeletons, shed by dockworkers. Veer's datapad guided them to a scout ship. Its carapace cracked. Will it fly? Hank muttered, wrenching open the hatch. Veer trilled, a sound Hank had learned meant probably. Inside, the cockpit stank of ammonia and fear. Hank's hands flew over the controls, jury-rigging YIG tech, with human intuition. Veer input coordinates. The void's epicenter. The ship shuddered, lift off a series of lurching hops. Hank gripped the yoke. You know this'll kill us? Veer chirped. Yes, but they input the course anyway. As the void swelled on the view screen, a wound in reality, edges fraying. Hank's wrist recorder blinked. He hit transmit. Hey universe, if you're listening, tell Ellie I figured it out. The static swallowed his voice. Behind them, YIG ships swarmed like hornets. Ahead, the void waited, and the Mary May's duct tape, still clinging to the pilot's chair, glinted in the hellish light. Chapter 3. The void wasn't silent. It sang. A low keening vibration hummed through the YIG scout ship's hull, resonating in Hank's molars, his ribs, the hollows behind his eyes. It wasn't sound. It was the howl of space itself unraveling. Through the cracked view screen, the anomaly pulsed like an infected heart, tendrils of red-gold distortion lashing outward. Hank gripped the ship's yoke, a YIG design, shaped like a twisted vertebra, and tried not to think about radiation burns, or the way Veer's carapace had begun to flake, brittle as old paint. Epicenter in 10 jumps. Veer rasped from the co-pilot's seat, their voice box damaged during the escape. Their claws skittered across the nav console, inputting coordinates only they could parse. The YIG star charts were frantic things here, flickering like frightened fireflies. 10 jumps. Hank's stomach clenched. Each short-range FTL hop was a gamble. The void's gravitational tides could shred them mid-transit, scattering atoms across a dozen light-years, but flying straight through the maelstrom. Suicide. He glanced at Veer. The alien's obsidian eyes reflected the anomaly's glow, their antenna trembling. Not fear, anticipation. You sure your priests didn't have a backup plan? Hank asked, adjusting the thrusters. The ship stank of ammonia and burnt wiring. a stench that seeped into his pores. Prayers? Sacrifices? Anything? Veer trilled, a sound that might have been a laugh. They tapped a claw against the datapad, salvaged from the temple. The screen showed the void's growth over centuries, its edges gnawing at egg colonies. You are sacrifice, they hummed. And prayer. Hank snorted. Ain't holy enough for that. But the truth itched beneath his skin. Ellie's research, buried in his memory like shrapnel, decades-old equations about subspace fractures, microwave harmonics, unintended consequences, the kind of science that got labeled accident and buried in classified graves, the kind that killed entire crews. The ship lurched into the first jump. Mere reality folded. For a heartbeat, Hank was back in the truck cab, Ellie beside him, her boots propped on the dashboard, as Nebraska's snow-blurred highways stretched into infinity. It's just energy, Hank, she'd said, sketching waveforms in the fogged glass. You can't fear it. You gotta dance with it. Then the vision shattered. The cockpit rematerialized, screen screaming. A proximity alert blared. A tendril of the void had grazed the hull. The ship's outer armor was pitted, crystalline growth sprouting where the anomaly had touched it. Cancerous, hungry. One down, Hank muttered. His hands shook. He tucked them under his thighs, a old trick to hide weakness. Veer said nothing, but their claws tightened on the console. Jump 2, jump 3. By the fourth, the air tasted of ozone and blood. Hank's nose had started bleeding. A slow trickle he wiped away with a grease-stained sleeve. Veer's carapace had cracked along the thorax, leaking iridescent fluid that sizzled where it dripped. They didn't complain. Ig didn't. He'd learned. They just endured. During the seventh jump, the comms crackled to life. At first Hank thought it was interference. Scraps of music tangled in the static. Then he recognized the twang of steel guitar. Sweet Home Alabama, warped and ghostly, playing through a dead ship's corpse. The Merry May. Hell, he breathed. His wrecked rig was out there, caught in the void's orbit, a tomb with a soundtrack. Ellie's song. Veer tilted their head, antenna quivering. Signal. Faint. Origin. My past. Hank killed the comms. The music died, but the melody clung, a phantom limb. He wondered if Ellie's body still floated in the May's carcass, preserved by the void's stasis. He hoped not. Some things deserved to decay. Meyer jump 8 ruptured the coolant lines. Veer sealed the leaks with a resin secreted from their damaged carapace. Movement sluggish. Hank rationed water, sipping tepid drops from a cracked canteen. They didn't speak. Words were luxuries now. The ninth jump broke the nav system. Hank pieced it back together, using the Merry May's duct tape. The roll still tucked in his tool belt. Silver and stubborn, it held the Yig circuitry together. Veer watched, clicking softly, approval or disbelief. He couldn't tell. Human fix, Hank said, shrugging. Works till it doesn't. The final jump tore the ship apart. They emerged inside the storm. The void's core was a cathedral of light and noise. Gravitational waves crashed against the hull, each one a hammer blow. The view screen shattered, spraying glass like frozen rain. Hank threw an arm over his face, felt blood bloom along his cheek. Veer trilled a warning, a sound swallowed by the maelstrom. Outside, the anomaly churned. At its center floated a structure, ancient, rust-pitted, its parabolic dish warped but intact. A microwave array. Human, pre-Exodus. Ellie's equations unfurled in Hank's mind. Resonance frequencies, feedback loops. The array hadn't just torn subspace. It had become a bridge, anchoring the void to reality. There, he croaked, pointing. That's the wound. Veer hissed. Stabilize it. Now. The controls were dead. The ship's thrusters sputtered, eaten by the void's corrosion. Hank unbuckled, knees buckling under the gravitational shear. Need to reach the array. No suit. Veer rasped. No choice. The alien hesitated. Then with a shuddering click, their carapace split along the spine. They peeled it off, a sacrificial husk, and thrust the still dripping shell at Hank. Armor. Temporary. The chitin burned against his skin, alive and squirming. He didn't thank them,
Gratitude was too human. The airlock cycled. Hank floated into the storm. The void wasn't vacuum. It was a living thing, a throat constricting around him. Radiation prickled his skin. Despite the carapace armor, the array loomed, its dish bristling with crystalline tumors. Human tech, mutated by 2 centuries of exposure. He anchored himself to the dish's frame, mag boots scraping rust. The control panel was a fossil, switches frozen, screens dark, but there beneath layers of cosmic grime, a handprint, 21 set century OSHA warnings, duct tape holding wires together. Hank laughed. The sound ripped his throat raw. He worked. Tools were extensions of his hands, prayers in steel. He bypassed fried circuits, rerouted power through the dish's skeleton. Veer's datapad, jury-rigged to the array, hummed equations. The void screamed. Memories flickered. Ellie in the lab, dancing with her ferns. The Mary May's first flight, her engines singing. The way silence felt after her death, a hollow not even conspiracy theories could fill. The array shuddered, a harmonic spike. Almost, he whispered. A shadow fell over him. The Yig warship materialized like a blade, its hull scarred from pursuit. The Cardo priest's face filled the comm screen on Hank's pad, ichor still oozing from its slit throat. It shrieked, a sound that liquefied fear. The array's dish began to rotate. Hank clung to the framework, as inertial forces tore at him. The priest was hijacking the array, twisting it into a weapon. Red light pulsed. The void's tendrils recoiled, then lashed toward Yig space. No, Hank snarled. He unslung his tool belt. Myers. The duct tape was the last strip. He slapped it over the array's ruptured core, sealing the feedback loop. The tape glowed. Fusion-powered adhesive bonding temporal layers. Human ingenuity. Galactic band-aid. The array stilled. For a heartbeat, the void held its breath. Then light, clean, silent, whole, erupted from the dish. The red tendrils dissolved. The priest's screen cut off mid-transmission. Hank's carapace armor crumbled to ash. He floated. The Mary May's wreckage glinted in the distance, her song finally silent. Veer's voice crackled over the comms. Hank, jump coordinates, now. He didn't move. Ellie's ghost sat cross-legged on the dish, glowing faintly. Took you long enough, she said, grinning. He reached for her. Darkness swallowed the stars. Chapter 4. The darkness wasn't empty. It never was. Hank Cooper drifted, limbs loose, the last warmth of his body bleeding into the void's newborn silence. Stars pricked the black around him, sharp and cold as diamond shards. His lungs burned, but he didn't fight it. Fighting required a future. Instead, he let the memories come. Ellie dancing in the lab, her hands cupping a bioluminescent fern, its petals trembling like a heartbeat. Look, Hank, it's singing. The static of her final transmission, the way her voice had frayed at the edges. I love. A shadow eclipsed the stars. Something clamped around his wrist. He gasped, air scorching his throat. Veer's face filled his vision. Their obsidian eyes cracked, carapace flaking like old plaster. They hauled him into the Yig scout ship's airlock, their claws leaving crescent moons in his flesh. The hatch sealed. Gravity slammed Hank to the floor, his ribs screaming. Why? He croaked, spitting blood. Veer didn't answer. They never did. The alien crouched over the nav console, inputting jump coordinates, with hands missing 2 claws. The ship shuddered, engines groaning. Through the cracked view screen, the void collapsed behind them, its tendrils dissolving into stardust. Hank curled on his side, watching nebula light filter through the Mary May's duct tape, patching the console. Silver against Yig biotech, a monument to human stubbornness. He laughed, the sound wet and broken. Veer trilled, a question, just, tired. The Yig homeworld smelled like rain and burnt sugar. Hank limped down the ramp of the scout ship, Veer at his side. The air was thick, humid, sticking to his skin like oil. Around them, spires of black glass rose into a violet sky. their surfaces etched with star maps that writhed under his gaze. A crowd of Yeeg gathered, their carapaces polished to a fearful sheen. They parted for the Carto priests, new ones, their robes less bloody, their claws trimmed. The high cartocrat approached, its mandibles clicking. It spoke in Galactic common, the words translated through Hank's salvaged wrist recorder. You stabilized the void, a heresy, a miracle. Hank shrugged, just a patch job. The cartocrat extended a claw, on it rested a metal, obsidian and iridescent, shaped like a coiled galaxy. Your name will be inscribed in the eternal atlas. A hero. The word curdled in the air. Hank glanced at Veer. The alien's antenna dipped. Disgust. Keep it, Hank said. Give the credit to Veer. They did the math. The cartocrat hissed but clasped the metal to its thorax. The border will be renamed. Here be stubborn monkeys. A jest. Yes. Yeah. Hilarious. Veer trilled softly. Approval. Nair. They gave him back his tools, his jacket, the photo of Ellie, edges curled from humidity. He found her in Nebraska. The plains stretched endless under a bruised twilight, wind hissing through dry grass. Ellie's grave was a simple stone, half buried by dirt and time. The lab where she'd died lay in ruins a mile east, its skeleton picked clean by scavengers. Hank knelt, knees popping, and placed the Yeeg star chart on the grave. The parchment shimmered, constellations shifting as if nervous. Figured it out, he muttered. The wind snatched the words. Turns out we're the damn dragons. A truck rumbled in the distance, its headlights cutting through the gloom. Modern rigs didn't need drivers, but this one had a human at the wheel. An old-timer maybe, clinging to analog steering. Hank watched it pass, Dustdevil swirling in its wake. He'd thought about rebuilding the Mary May, about podcasting again. Instead, he'd bought a cabin on the plains, its walls papered with star charts and repair manuals. The Yeeg sent updates, Veer leading a coalition of engineers. The void's scar fading. Humans joked about the Nebraska miracle, drank beer named Dustdevil Stout. Hank ignored it all. The stars were quieter now. Years later, a package arrived. No return address. Inside lay a child's drawing. A galaxy map scribbled in crayon. Duct tape plastered along the border. On the back, a single glyph. Veer's name. Hank tacked it to the wall beside Ellie's chart. That night, he opened a beer, flicked on the podcast recorder. The red light blinked. Last episode, he said. The mic picked up the creak of his chair, the sigh of wind against the windows. You ever wonder why we stop where we do? Why the map ends? Maybe it's not about what's out there. Maybe it's about what we carry. He shut off the mic. The stars burned on. Indifferent. Somewhere, a Yeeg child laughed, doodling tape across the dark. Epilogue. A classroom on Yeeg Prime. Younglings cluster around a hologram, claws tracing the Milky Way. One holds up a crude drawing. A human figure, grinning, clutching duct tape like a sword. The teacher trills amused. And here, they hum, zooming in on the border. The stubborn monkeys. Remember, never underestimate improvisation. The children click laughter into the warm, sweet air.